everybody, happy Thursday, and we're back to the old way of doing things. No more YouTube Space LA sets right now. It's just you and me, and I kind of missed it, to be honest. But today I'm answering an FAQ, just like the olden days. And if you want your question answered, the best way to have that happen if you're new to the channel, welcome, is below Monday's video. In the first 48 hours, I get in there and I try to answer as many of your questions as I can, and I will pull from that some questions for my FAQ. And I also get on KatiMorton.com under Katie's videos, Q&A for videos, and I am active in there as well, and I'll pull questions for videos through that too. So if you have a question, ask them there. But today's question comes from an OG viewer of mine, and it says, Katie, I was wondering, how do people get to feel okay with disagreeing? I made a friend recently who likes to discuss/debate stuff and enjoys disagreeing, not like in a confrontational, destructive way, but just because she likes debating stuff. I have people in my life that are like that too. But it makes me really uncomfortable. When I was growing up, if I disagreed with a certain person, it would be horrible. All hell would break loose, and ultimately I'd end up feeling ashamed and really bad. So I've learned to try and read people for their opinions and stuff so that I don't inadvertently say anything that they would disagree with. And if I ever do, I do a super fast cleanup and I'm like, oh no, what I really meant was blank, blank, blank. Or, oh yeah, no, you're right. And I hate it because I don't want to be such a suck up. I want to be able to disagree and discuss things without feeling ashamed. But that's my own experience, so it terrifies me to even try. My models for disagreement were yelling and violence and just bad stuff overall. So my question is, how can I learn to get comfortable with disagreeing and discussing/debating? Because I don't have the vocabulary or know what it even looks like to do that. And I wanted to read out that whole question because I think it's really important for us to think about this, because in all honesty, I don't like disagreeing either. I don't really like conflict. I don't like it when people are really abrasive and like in your face. I'm like, ooh, that just makes me uncomfortable and I just don't want to deal with it. And so I totally understand where this person is coming from. But there are a couple of things that we can work on if we find ourselves like not really being true to who we are. And for the sake of potentially having a disagreement, we will go against things that we maybe think or believe. And I think it is important as we get older and as we grow as people that we have a sense of who we are and we're okay with having to stand up for it. And I know we're going to feel uncomfortable, but through practice, it gets better, just like everything else in life. So there are two things that I'm going to talk about with relation to this. And the first is building up your own self-esteem and confidence. And I know that that's really difficult. And I know that that sounds like a lot of work. And you're like, oh, Katie, just give me an easier answer. But the truth is, if we not only take the time to have a sense of who we are, what we believe in, maybe somebody brings up a topic and we don't even know what we think about it. And it's okay to say, hey, I don't disagree or agree with you because I really haven't thought about it. Give me time, we can talk about it later. I think that part of that is the development of ourselves. What do we think about the situation? What do we believe? And then, is it worth arguing about? Or, having a discussion about? Maybe it is. And so taking some time to figure out what you think is key to that. But also having some good, positive inner self-talk. A lot of us tell ourselves all sorts of shitty things all the time, and then that builds up and we end up thinking that we're bad people or that we don't deserve to disagree, or it would be terrible if somebody didn't like us or didn't agree with us. And it just leads us to being insecure and really struggling to assert ourselves. So negate those negative things that you're telling yourself. Be aware of what you say in your head to yourself each and every day, because if it's more negative than positive, we need to work to change that. And you know how we do that? We talk back to those negative things with a little positive affirmation like, hey, I'm doing the best I can. Hey, I'm working on that. I'm a good person. I do my best, what have you, to try to stop that negative cycle of thought. And slowly but surely we'll start to feel better. We'll start to feel good about ourselves and okay with who we are and what we stand for. The second thing to consider is how we were raised. A lot of families don't yell in front of each other or yell a lot. And honestly, either experience can leave us feeling really uncomfortable with confrontation. On the one hand, if we have a family who never argues and never raises their voice, just hearing like raised voices or any sense of disagreement makes us really anxious because we're like, oh my God, then nobody does that. I'm not used to that. That's really uncomfortable. But on the other end, if we, let's say, had a very volatile family life, and maybe there's a lot of like physical abuse or emotional abuse, when people raise their voices, our anxiety can also be raised because we think, oh my God, it's just like when I was growing up, I can't deal with it, and we panic in the same way. And so taking note of how you were raised to kind of give you a reference point of where you're at. How were you raised around disagreements and discussions and maybe arguments? What was a norm for you? Because that gives us an idea of where to start and what to work towards. Because then we're going to have to set up little steps along the way. Let's say that we were raised in a family that never argued. And so the thought of arguing is really uncomfortable. Almost like this person said, I don't even have the vocabulary of what I would say. We're going to start there. And maybe our first goal is to think of the words we would use when we want to discuss something. Let's say we disagree with someone. For example, if somebody says, hey, I really, I think recycling is just bullshit. I don't even think it happens properly. I think it probably goes in the dump anyways, and they just don't tell us. But let's say you know that that's not true. You could say, hey, I totally hear you, but I read this article once, blah, blah, blah. So you're saying, yeah, I heard you, but blah. I always think that's the best way to turn a potential argument or disagreement into a discussion. Hearing each other's sides, being okay with disagreeing, knowing that they have a different point of view, and recognizing that point of view. That is what I think stops fights and turns them into discussions. So make sure if you're on this path and you're trying to learn how to discuss and disagree in a healthy way, that we always hear each side out. Nothing is worse than trying to have a conversation with someone who won't even hear out opposing thoughts. It's important to be able to hear other people and say, yeah, I get that. I see where you're coming from, but let me tell you where I'm coming from. Then we have a discussion, a healthy, happy discussion. And I hope that you learned something from this. Share your experiences in the comments because I know there's a lot more to this topic, but that just kind of gets us started in thinking about why we might be uncomfortable disagreeing and how we can have healthy and happy conversations with people, even if we don't agree 100% of the time. And I will see you all on Monday. Have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. Be safe. Bye.